Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul uqdadan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Amin ya Rabb. Wa ba'du. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. You are watching part 3, beginners level, Tajweed rules of Al-Qur'an Al-Kareem. This is lesson 7, and inshallah in this lesson we will be looking at the rulings of Hamzatul Wasl, which is the connecting Hamzah. And it appears like this in the Uthmani script. It's an alif with the head of a sad on top. Before I start the lesson, I just want to mention that Hamzatul Wasl is actually an Arabic grammar related topic, but the rule does occur in the Qur'an. To achieve a good understanding of Hamzatul Wasl, it's necessary to have at least the basic comprehension of Arabic grammar and the terms. So I would advise you before watching this lesson, or I have given some sort of idea on what verbs and what nouns and participles are. Just for this lesson, I would suggest, or this rule, I would suggest that you have a look at the parts of speech. Okay, Arabic grammar, the parts of speech, and you could find that on websites. Also, I would suggest that you have a look at the translation of the Qur'an, the words, and a website such as Qur'an.com. They have word-by-word meaning and also a grammatical breakdown of the words, and it tells you which word is a verb or a noun or a participle or a preposition or whatever it is, and that will inshallah help you to look at these words which start with the Hamzatul Wasl, and then you can break it down and put down which words are in which category, and that will help you with this rule also. However, it doesn't mean that you will not understand this rule if you don't look at this, or if you don't know the meaning of any of these terms, or if you don't know Arabic. This is not the case, inshallah. The way it is taught, there is a methodology that if you follow it, inshallah, you will be using this rule correctly. What I just suggested is for you so that it would increase your knowledge and it would help you in understanding this rule. So it's entirely up to you how you approach this lesson, inshallah. May Allah give me tawfiq to teach this rule and for you to understand it, inshallah. Bismillah. So this lesson, inshallah, firstly we will look at the purpose of Hamzatul Wasl and see why the Hamzatul Wasl actually exists. Then we will look at the two types of Hamza that appear in the Qur'an. It's important to look at the difference between Hamzatul Wasl and Hamza al-Qata' and see how they are treated differently in the Qur'an. We will look at the two possible ways of reading Hamza al-Wasl, and this is where the ruling comes in. The first is the easy one, which we skip or drop the Hamza al-Wasl when we are continuing reading, and we will look at some examples to make this more clear, inshallah. And the second is pronounced, and this is when we actually pronounce the Hamza al-Wasl that is connected to these words when we are starting the word. And the Hamzatul Wasl, as I said, can appear in verbs, nouns and participles. And we will see how we connect the correct harakah on these parts of speech. In the end, inshallah, we will look at the important rule of Hamzatul Wasl coming after a mad letter and how we are supposed to read this. Like in this example, this is a word ending with the alif mad, and the next letter is Hamzatul Wasl in this word. Okay, so meeting of two sakin letters. If you remember when we talked about the tanween in the previous videos, I looked at a rule when the word is ending with a tanween and starting with a sakin letter. So that also came under this category, meeting of two sakin letters. And this is another rule that comes under this category. So inshallah we will look at this and see examples to make this more clear so we read this rule correctly, inshallah. Bismillah, let's continue. The purpose of Hamzatul Wasl. Why does the Hamzatul Wasl exist? In the Arabic language, one must start any reading with a voweled letter. So the word has to start with a vowel. It can't start with a sukoon. Okay, letter can't have a sukoon. However, some words are not written with a vowel on the first letter, hence starting with a second letter. Therefore, an extra Hamza, this Hamzatul Wasl, Wasl meaning connecting, is put at the beginning of the word. Dropped when continuing reading, So if you are continuing recitation, you don't need to use it. Sounded when starting a word. So when you are starting the word, you obviously need to put this there so you can actually put a haraka on it and read the word. Okay, so this in a nutshell is what Hamzah al-Wasl is all about. It's easy to remember that 90% of the times Hamzah al-Wasl will be given a kasra. Okay, so what we can actually memorize is the words that need to be given a dhamma or a fatha, because most of them, all the rest will be given a kasra. Okay, so that's inshallah something you will notice. Bismillah. Let's look at both Hamzah al-Qata' and Hamzah al-Wasl. There are two types of Hamzah that appear in the Qur'an. Both are read and treated differently. The cutting Hamzah can be written like this, these 5 ways in the Qur'an. So you will see it written like this, either on its own, and it is the head of an ayn. Ayn comes from the word al-Qata', and the head of the Sad comes from the word Wasl. So it can appear on top of the alif, underneath the alif, on top of the waw, and on top of the letter ya. The sign in the Quran, as I said, is the head of the ayn. And these 2 points you please note and remember. Hamzah al-Qata' may appear anywhere within a word. So it can appear anywhere, in the start, in the middle, or at the end of a word. It is always pronounced. Okay, so it's always pronounced. Whichever haraka it has, even if it has a sukoon, it's always there and it's going to be pronounced. Let's look at some examples. فَإِذَا, it's written underneath the alif with a kasra in the middle of the word. فَإِذَا, Allah at the start of a word with a fatha. شَيْءٍ at the end of a word on its own with a kasra tanween. قُرِئَ on top of the letter ya with a fatha. بِغَائِبِينَ in the middle of the word with a kasra. الْمُؤْمِنِينَ on top of the waw with a sukoon. So al-mu'minina like this. And remember, this is not al-mu'minina. We won't read the waw. When there's 2 letters, the general rule is when there are 2 letters, you read the one that is on top. Okay, so here is the Hamzah. It's just taken the seat, the waw seat. Here is taken the ya seat. Okay, so we won't read quriya, it's quri'a. Al-mu'minina. Okay, al-mu'minina. Not mu'minina, al-mu'minina. Coming to the Hamzah al-Wasl, the only way it is written is like this, with the alif and the head of a sad. It appears only at the beginning of a word. Okay, this Hamzah al-Qata' can appear, as I said, in the start, in the middle, at the end. But this Hamzah al-Wasl is only at the beginning of a word. If you see here, it's at the beginning of istawqada, at the beginning of alladhi. Okay, pronounced only if there is no letter before it. Okay, so here Hamzah al-Qata', as I said, is always pronounced no matter where. But Hamzah al-Wasl, the difference is it's only pronounced if there is no letter before it and you are starting a word with it. Okay, so this is the general idea of Hamzah al-Wasl. Let's carry on. Bismillah. I just wanted to show you the Uthmani script compared to the Majidi script and how the Hamzah al-Wasl appears like how I am teaching it, with the alif and the head of a sad on top. And it's very easy to distinguish between Hamzah al-Wasl and Hamzah al-Qata'. For example, here in An'amta, you can see the Hamzah is a Hamzah with an on top of the alif, okay, with a fatha. And here Hamzah al-Wasl comes with no haraka on its own with the head of a sad. So you can distinguish between both. However, in this script, it's a bit difficult to distinguish between Hamzah al-Wasl and Hamzah al-Qata' because they look exactly the same. Okay, therefore it's easier to do this rule, to learn this rule on this script. Another thing to note is Hamzah al-Wasl has not been given a haraka anytime in the Uthmani script. Okay, so you can see ihdi, it hasn't been given any haraka or anywhere else, okay, in the Uthmani script. Whereas in the Majidi script, you will have the haraka, especially when the ayah is starting with the Hamzah al-Wasl, but not in every case. So here, this is Hamzah al-Wasl, and this doesn't have a haraka, and this doesn't have a haraka in most cases. Okay, so it's a little bit difficult to distinguish between Hamzah al-Wasl unless you know the language and you know where the Hamzah al-Wasl or which one is the Hamzah al-Qata. That's good, but if you don't and you don't know Arabic, then it's a bit difficult to distinguish between the both. Inshallah, now let's read the examples where we have to skip the Hamzah al-Wasl. Bismillah. Bismillah. So here's to remind you, Hamzah al-Wasl can be read in two ways. First is a skipped, and the second is a pronounced. And inshallah, we'll be looking at the first one, which is to skip Hamzah al-Wasl. If the reader connects the word which begins with Hamzah al-Wasl with the letter preceding it, so the letter preceding Hamzah al-Wasl is directly connected to the letter following Hamzah al-Wasl. So we will connect the ba to the sin and not read the Hamzah al-Wasl that is in between, okay? Because the letter before it has a haraka, we don't need to read Hamzah al-Wasl, so we will connect the ba to the sin. So we say bismi and not bi asmi or bi ismi, bismi. Libnihi, from the lam to the ba, not reading the Hamzah al-Wasl. Libnihi, from the waw to the ba. Wabanaha, fa to the ta. Fattiba'un, the fa to the ba again. Fab'athu, fa to the ta. Fattakhadha, fa to the dal. Faddarattum, wanhar, waw to the noon. Wanhar, the lam to the ta. Lattaba'tum, waw to the ta. Watlu, waw to the mim. Wamra'atuhu, waw to the sin. Wasjud, waw to the sin. Wastaghfirhu, and this is asatirul, the ra to the lam. Asatirul awwalin. Okay, so all of these examples you've seen, the letter before the Hamzah al-Wasl had a haraka, so we don't need to read it. We can skip and drop the Hamzah al-Wasl. These are some exercises from some ayah taken from the Qur'an. Let's read them. Bismillah. Nakal al-akhirati wal-ula. Where is the Hamzah al-Wasl? Here. Nakal al-akhirati. Again. Waw to the lam. Wal-ula. Wadhaka rasma. Here. Wadhaka rasma. وذكر اسم ربه فصلى فالمدبرات أمرا. You see? فالمدبرات أمرا. أولئك هم الكفرة الفجرة. أولئك هم not هم ال, or like this. No. هم إذ انبعث أشقاها. إذ انبعث. There is another rule on top of the noon, but we will inshallah look at this in part 4. But for now, dhal connects to the noon. إذ انبعث أشقاها فأراه الآية الكبرى بالوادي المقدس فادخلي في عبادي. I hope you can notice the Hamzah al-Wasl. I am not stopping on everyone, but I want you to notice it yourself. فادخلي. Okay? Fa to the dal. وبرزت الجحيم. Ta to the lam. ولقد رآه بالأفق المبين. How many Hamzah al-Wasl do you see here? 2. One after the ba, one after the qaf. وَلَقَدْ رَآهُ بِالْأُفُقِ الْمُبِينِ. We are connecting. There's before the Hamzah al-Wasl, there's a letter with a haraka, so we just connect it. Okay? The qaf with the kasra to the lam. Okay. أساطير الأولين كتاب الأبرار. Alhamdulillah. So that was when you actually skip the Hamzah al-Wasl. Now this is the second rule. When we actually pronounce the Hamzah al-Wasl. Hamzah al-Wasl will be assigned with Dhamma if the third letter of the verb has a Dhamma. Okay? So here, these are all verbs. And if you look at the third letter and you include the Hamzah al-Wasl, 1, 2, 3. All of these letters, the third letter has a Dhamma, an original Dhamma. And I'll come to original in a minute, inshallah, after I explain this. These are original Dhamma. If it has an original Dhamma on the third letter in the verb, we will also start the Hamzah al-Wasl with a Dhamma. Okay? So let's read the example. Ubtuliya, utlu, ujtuthat, uhshuru, ukhruj, udkhuli, udhkur, urkud, ustuhfidu, ushdud, udturra, u'budu, اغدو اقنتي انقص امكثوا اقعدوا انشزوا انصرني انظر. Alhamdulillah. Now the exceptional case. Exceptional case. The following words are the only verbs in the Qur'an that has Dhamma on the third letter, and the reader should assign Kasra to Hamzah al-Wasl if he starts reading with it. So you have to memorize these 5 words. These 5 words will have a Dhamma, but because this Dhamma is conditional, it's not the original makeup of these verbs. The reason being is that this Dhamma on the third letter was actually in the original verb, it was a Kasra and it was followed by a Ya. So for example, this would be read as iqdiyu, it was like this, okay, imshiyu. So because there were 2 sakin letters meeting, the ya was dropped and the kasra was given a dhamma instead. So the original form is different, but however, that's again is grammar reasons which we don't really need to know. All you need to know that these words occur in the Qur'an, and if you start to read these words, just these 5 verbs, you will start with a kasra. So you will read as ittaqu, iqdu, ituni, ibnu, imshu. Okay, so and this is a rule. Just for now, just memorize it as ituni. Okay, we will come to this. This is mad badal, and we will inshallah come to this in the next part. Hamzah al-Wasl will be assigned with kasra if the third letter of the verb has fatha or kasra. Okay, so in other words, a verb can only be given a kasra or a dhamma. Okay, if you see a verb and the third letter is a dhamma, apart from the exceptions of course, if you see it has the dhamma on the third letter, you will start with the dhamma. Otherwise you will start a verb with a kasra. So this word we read as إِثَّاقَلْتُمْ إِجْعَلْ إِحْمِلْ إِخْسَأُوا إِدَّارَكُوا إِسْتَعِينُوا إِشْرَحْ إِصْبِرْ إِصْطَفَى إِضْرِبْ إِلْتَقَيْتُمْ إِعْمَلْ إِهْتَزَّتْ إِهْبِطْ إِنْتَظِرُوا. Bismillah. So pronouncing Hamzah al-Wasl with nouns, the general rule is that in nouns the Hamzah al-Wasl is pronounced with a kasra. However, you can use the third letter rule that we used in the verbs, looking at the third letter and putting the haraka and starting with it. But that is for the regular nouns. These are irregular nouns, okay, the ones you see here, these are irregular nouns, and these will always start with a kasra. This will be ithnani, ithnataini, ibna, ibnata, ibni, ibnatayya, imru'un, imra'atu, imri'in, isma. Okay, and of course there's different variations of these nouns. They can come in different grammatical forms in the Qur'an, in different ayah. But the general rule is that these will always be starting with a kasra. And finally, the particle lam of lam at-ta'rif, al, which means the. If Hamzah al-Wasl is followed by the lam of the definite article al, the, it is read with a fatha. So only in the case of lam at-ta'rif, we will read this Hamzah al-Wasl, pronounce it with a fatha. And if you see these nouns, ar-rasul, and how we pronounce this lam, this is we will look at this lam inshallah in the next lesson, and which lam we pronounce and which we don't, because some we pronounce and some we don't, looking at the letter that comes after the moon or the sun letter. Inshallah, more of that in the next lesson. But here you will always start this with a fatha. Okay, so again, the lam of lam at-ta'rif, the definite article the, this is the. Ar-rasulu, this will always start with a fatha. And inshallah, if you're starting Hamzah al-Wasl, you're starting it, of course, this is with a fatha. And remember, just as a reminder, if you're continuing reading and whichever harakah comes before on the letter, obviously you will join it on with that and not read the Hamzah al-Wasl. This is only when you are starting the word. So bismillah, I'll read this. Ar-rasulu, al-maliku, al-kitabi, as-samawati. Okay, and many more examples, always read with a fatha. Do note that conjunctions such as waw and fa should be read with the verb because of its strong link, and rules of Hamzah al-Wasl shouldn't be applied. So for example here, wattaqullaha, it's better when you have these sort of conjunctions, when you have waw and fa, to read it and not break it up and say wa and ittaqullaha, for example. We don't do this. It's better to say wattaqullaha because this is sort of connected to this verb. So a summary of this lesson: 2 ways of reading Hamzah al-Wasl. First is skipping it if between words and continuing reading, and the second is pronounced when starting the word. So this is a very good chart summarizing the vowel for beginning Hamzah al-Wasl: fatha, kasra and dhamma. Fatha in the case of al only, al-qamar, al-shams, yeah, and that is starting with a fatha. Kasra in the case of all nouns and verbs if the third letter of the verb has a fatha or a kasra. And dhamma only in the case of verbs where the third letter of the verb has a fixed or permanent dhamma. And this is the original dhamma I said. So which words are these? All of them, all of the verbs, apart from the ones that we studied, the exception. So apart from imshu, iqdu, and those 5 that we looked at, all of the rest of the verbs are original, and you will put a dhamma on the Hamzah al-Wasl when you start it, inshallah. So as I said in the start of the video, most of the words that begin with Hamzah al-Wasl are assigned a kasra. So here's a very quick methodology without taking into account any nouns, any verbs, any participles. If it's an al, you start with a fatha. If the third letter has the dhamma, you give a dhamma. Otherwise, you will assign a kasra. And this is, of course, keeping the exceptions in mind. Lastly, a very important rule concerning Hamzah al-Wasl. If Hamzah al-Wasl is preceded by a mad letter, the letter preceding the mad letter is directly connected to the letter that follows Hamzah al-Wasl. So, in other words, when there is a mad letter followed by a Hamzah al-Wasl, you will drop the mad letter and connect it on to the letter that comes after the Hamzah al-Wasl. Okay, so here you will read it as وَإِذَا الْبِحَارُ وَإِذَا الْبِحَارُ. So from the dhal to the lam. Here, إِذَا السَّمَاءُ. And there's a reason why we miss this lam. We don't read this lam. This is lam shamsi. إِذَا السَّمَاءُ يَا أَيُّهَا الْإِنسَانُ. Yeah, يَا أَيُّ. I won't say يَا أَيُّهَا الْإِنسَانُ. I can break it up and read it like this. But if I join it, I say يا أيها الإنسان. Ha to the lam. إذا اكتالوا. From the dhal to the kaf. Dropping the mud from the dhal to the kaf. إذا اكتالوا. And just some exercises. Bismillah. قل يا أيها الكافرون. قالوا الآن. And if I break it up here, قل يا أيها الكافرون. Remember we start this Hamzah al-Wasl and Lam al-Ta'rif with a fatha. قالوا الآن. Again Hamzah al-Wasl, Lam al-Ta'rif and a fatha. قال لا ينال عهد الظالمين. Dropping the mud letter, connecting the dal to the dha. عهد الظالمين. And if I break it up, عهدي الظالمين. لصال الجحيم. If I read it together, missing the Hamzah al-Wasl, dropping the mud, لصال الجحيم from the lam to the lam. But if I stop, لصال الجحيم. And you see how the mud is read when I stopped, and the Hamzah al-Wasl, I started the word with the Hamzah al-Wasl. فلقتحم العقبة. فلا اقتحم العقبة. This is, I put a kasra on this Hamzah al-Wasl and started it with a kasra because the third letter is a fatha, and the ruling is if the third letter is a fatha or a kasra, we put a kasra. فلا اقتحم العقبة إلا ابتغاء وجه ربه الأعلى. So if I read it separate, إلا ابتغاء وجه ربه الأعلى. Alhamdulillah. I hope that was beneficial, and inshallah we will meet next time. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.